Hello and welcome back to the Go for Two podcast. I'm Liam, your host, and today we're here to talk about something that isn't a division preview. We're going to break down our 5 playoff teams that are going to fall out of the playoffs from the 2024 season. 5 teams that we think can get in to the playoffs this season. On average, it's normally 5 or 6. Last year was a bit different, but it's normally 5 or 6 teams every year. So the plan for today is we're going to break it down and try and work out who they are. Let's see if we can find out those teams. And to do that is a very special guest that everyone knows. A few days before he jets off to New York, he's kindly given us some of his time. Mr. Lee Wakefield from the Touchdown. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, very good, mate. Yeah, very good. I'm actually off work now recording on a Friday afternoon. So, yeah, I'm basically in holiday mode. So, hopefully, it won't come across too much in the takes. But no, as always, glad to be here with you talking some football.
Yeah, and a non-8 o'clock record means you're not in pitch black. So that's a bonus.
Yeah, that was bad of me on the last one. I should have turned on a lamp. Obviously, as typical with us, we always overrun. I didn't think we'd be finishing off in the dark, so I didn't leave a lamp on in the last one. So, yeah, it did go very dark by the end of it.
Yeah, for anyone watching, I haven't forced Lee to record in the day against his will, just to fit it off. He is off work. Yeah. Cool. Like I said in the intro, we're going to try and get those teams. Could be 3 in NFC, 1 in AFC, could be 4 in one in another. We both got our own list, and we're going to kind of break it down and go from there. We are going to go in. Let's go in alphabetical order for the conference. We'll start with the AFC, since as me and Lee are both AFC fans. Both our teams made the playoffs as well. So last year we had, in order of, not just saying this because my team's at the top, in order of win-loss record, it was the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens, and the Texans. They were your 4 division winners as well. And then the wild card, Chargers, who actually had more wins than the Texans in the 5th seed. Steelers were the 6th seed again. I just can't believe the Steelers are the 6th seed every year. That might spoil something in a minute. And then the Denver Broncos, another AFC West team, 10-7 coming in. And then I think we had 3 or 4 teams that were between those 9 and 8 wins underneath. Plan is first, let's talk about the teams we think could fall out. And then we'll go into how we think we would replace them. In terms of teams that won't fall out, for me, there's the teams I had no consideration of. So I don't think the Chiefs will, obviously biased. Bills, didn't think they would either. Ravens, didn't think they would either. And then for me, all the other teams were then a debate. Doesn't mean I put them in my list, but they were all a debate. Did you have any different locks, I guess, than that from the AFC?
No, I've got exactly the same 3 locks, to be fair. The way I did it is I arranged all the teams that made the playoffs into a list of likelihoods, and the Bills are actually the least likely for me, and then followed by the Chiefs and the Ravens. Just the Ravens because they're in a slightly kind of division that's a bit weird, whereas I think the Chiefs and Bills have got a clearer path to winning the division again. As they have done for the past few years. Yeah, no, completely the same locks, and then like you say, the other teams in consideration, either in or out.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't put it in order, but I did some calculations for the next bit where I was looking at schedule, playoff probability. I tried to rank all the teams on how good both sides of the ball are, and I actually did have the Bills as the least likely to fall out, or the strongest team. I think I actually had the Ravens as well, slightly above the Chiefs, just because I think the worst teams in the Chiefs division are going to be stronger than the worst teams in that division. For example, I can't see the Browns beating the Ravens at all, but I could see any team in the AFC West beating each other in one game.
Sure.
Yeah, had the same locks. Cool. Let's talk about out of those teams then. Who do we think is most likely to drop out? And we're going to go in order of most likely. When we talk about replacement teams, we'll do the same. So why don't you kick us off? Who out of that list are your most likely team to miss the playoffs?
I think you kind of alluded to it. I think we might agree on this one. It's the Steelers, the most likely one to drop out. I think I said this recently on another pod. The Steelers, they're not falling apart, but this year is going to really test that Mike Tomlin record of his with his winning season record. I don't think they're a particularly bad team. For example, their defense will be really good still, but what they're doing with Aaron Rodgers, how he only likes to play in a certain offense, a certain type of offense now, which I'm not sure is a great mesh with Arthur Smith. I'm not sure his personality is a great mesh with many offensive coordinators nowadays.
With any humans, you should have said that.
Yeah, pretty much. And then, like you say, the division's pretty strong. So the Ravens, we've both just agreed upon, they'll make the playoffs. The Bengals offense will cause anyone problems. And the Browns, defense, I don't think is going to be a pushover. I think, obviously they've got massive problems elsewhere on the roster. But the pathway to 10 wins for the Steelers is pretty narrow for me. And you kind of said, that in the beginning, to make the 6th seed, it almost feels like they're locked into that. But it feels like that's kind of built on sand a little bit. And that sand is kind of ebbing away a little bit.
Yeah, so I've got a few metrics and stuff in my notes, but then I kind of started at each team off of what the feel is like. And I basically just put last year felt like to get them in the playoffs was just the most Tomlin ball. So it's the most Tomlin esque season you could get. They were high on takeaways. Defense was really good at the start of the season, then faded away. They were one of the best teams in clutch situations in terms of like field goals, forcing turnovers, fourth down conversions. In terms of defense, they were one of the best at stopping fourth downs. So it just felt like everything that's a little bit not random, but everything that can be a bit up and down, they were just extremely good at last year. And for me, it's like a bit of a thin margin for success. And then this year, they've got the 25th hardest schedule, I think it was. No, 24th hardest schedule in the NFL, which is partly because of the division, but also the teams they play out of division are quite difficult. And I think turnover differential, they were, top 6 in the NFL last year. And I don't think that's likely to continue.
That's super volatile, isn't it? It
is. Yeah.
Really difficult to repeat.
Yeah, 100%. And then the other stuff is just what you've mentioned. We'll talk about them in a bit, I'm sure. But the Ravens are very good. Bengals, I think, are going to bounce back from last season to some degree in terms of be better than the Steelers. And then, like you mentioned, I wouldn't surprise me in a one-off game if the Browns' defense is good enough to slow down Aaron Rodgers and stuff to make some terrible 12-9 game and crap weather. So, yeah, I just think that they were, for me, the most obvious one. Which would be a shame for Tomlin, but I just think it's one year too many, and it might actually be good news for the franchise long term in terms of finally deciding where to go next.
Yeah, absolutely. They need a pathway to a quarterback in some way, don't they? And sticking around at 9-8 or similar sort of mediocre record is obviously the worst place to be in that sense. So yeah, I just think there's a lot of things that are kind of like I say, ebbing away. Ebbing away is the perfect phrase for them. I think Tomlin sets the floor so high, but then like I say, what's that built on? And like the perceived upgrade from Metcalf to Pickens is that good enough? I mean, I suppose he's meshes with Rodgers in terms of he's very vertical and things like that. But if that kind of doesn't materialize in the level that they would like on the offense, they're not exactly the most explosive offense in the world. And then they've got a quarterback that is on his last legs, to be kind.
Yeah, and I think the Arthur Smith offense point is probably one of the most key ones of like something will have to give. Either they'll change their approach, or Arthur Smith will change his approach, which is risky in itself because I know they've had all summer, but they drilled it into the guys last year. The offensive line is very similar. Some of the weapons are similar. I know DK's a big change. Or Aaron Rodgers will have to adjust, which I don't think would happen anyway. No. But either way, it's just like someone's having to change something that they've kind of drilled for such a long time. Because Arthur Smith's offense last year was very similar to the Titans' offense when he was the OC. So yeah, I'm with you. I just think the offense will be what lets them down. And I think the defense will still be good. But it's also one of the oldest defenses in the NFL. So there's some big risk there with Slay's like 32, Ramsey's 31, 32. TJ Watt's not as old, but gets injured a lot. Cam Hayward's an older player. So yeah, I think there's some risk for them. So yeah, I'm glad we agree on this number one team.
Yeah, the vibes also just seem a bit off, don't they? With Ramsey going there, replacing Minka Fitzpatrick. And then also Cam Hayward's talking about like wanting a new contract and things like that. And it's like Aaron Rodgers isn't exactly going to help the vibes either. Yeah, it just kind of all points towards a bit of a regression, doesn't it? Like especially when you're talking about the statistic regression that he could make as well.
Yeah, 100%. And they could actually finish 9-8 and keep his record and miss the playoffs. Would that surprise me? No, that wouldn't surprise me. Or if he was like 8-1. No, it's not. But I think personally, you're looking at 11 wins for a wild card team, maybe 10 at worst. And I just don't think they're gonna. I don't think they're gonna get there. Cool. We both agreed on that one. Then let's move on to team number 2. Who have you got? And I guess was there a bit of a teardrop for you in your mind of like one was so set, or did you have a second team where you were like, no? As soon as I saw this, I knew they were the team.
The Steelers and this team were in the same sort of tier, to be honest. Which it's the kind of chalky answer because obviously they were the 7th seed last year, but the Broncos. It's just similar-ish, I guess, in the same way that they're like a defense first team, which is obviously high up on my list to miss the playoffs. Obviously, I'm a defensive lover. We know this. They could be a legit like top 3 unit, but it's offense that wins you games, isn't it? And obviously, defense matters more in January and February. So for the first 15 weeks, you want the offense to win and crank up the points and things like that. And in very much in the sense that defense sets the floor of the team, whereas offense sets the ceiling. Obviously, like last year as well, the Broncos snuck in by beating the Chiefs' backups in the final week of the season. Will they be as fortunate this year? Probably not, because they finished the year up with a road game in Arrowhead and then at home to the Chargers. Are they going to be able to, come up against a team that's resting players in those 2 games? Probably not. So, you're not going to have that clear advantage. And as much as like Bo Nix was a lot better than I thought, in particular, than he can be, but how much progression can he squeeze out? Because obviously he's an older QB as it is, and he obviously maximized his talent, I think, already in year 1, which is maybe being a bit unfair. Maybe I could be wrong again. Already been wrong about him. as you said as well, it's a very tough division this year. Like the Raiders are not going to go 0-6 in this division, I would imagine.
No.
I was going to say it's towards the end of the pod, but the AFC West and the NFC West are probably the two divisions that could send any one of their teams to the playoffs, I would say. Obviously, not all four will make it, but I think all four in those two divisions are the only two divisions that have a chance of all four making it in some order. So it's really tough, and like I just don't see them kind of getting the rub of the green enough again.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Again, talk about this a lot, and you're a defense first person, but historically, defense is more volatile, whereas elite offense is a bit more year to year. You can predict them, and on paper, the defense should maybe even be better than it was last year. But all it takes is a couple of injuries and a couple of bad performances. The teams in the AFC West, in particular, would have spent all off season preparing a lot for their defense because they're going to be the most formidable defense in the division. For sure. So yeah, I think that's part of it. Last year they had something like 63 sacks, led the NFL as well. Like sacks, so pressures are obviously quite consistent, but sacks aren't as consistent. If you take away some of those sacks in those big games, you know, they're getting teams off the field on 3rd and 4th down. And I think in one score games, if you just flip them, they were like 8 and 9. And now again, you can't flip every one score game, but it's just another similar to what I said about the Steelers, where they're a little bit volatile. So yeah, no spoiler, no like going into my notes that they were my team. I actually had them 3rd on my list, but they are in my list. Very similar reasons to you. And then the other one, which I think is more applicable for the point of the AFC, is I think the standard to get in is a bit higher.
Yeah.
So any sort of slippage, even if they're still a really good team, one weird loss from a field goal or something, look what happened to the Bengals last year. They won like 5 out games in the spin at the end, but just losing that game to the Patriots at the start of the season, screwed them. So yeah, for me, I think it's the offense won't be as good. I don't think. I'm not sure the weapons are good enough, and the defense could be amazing, but it's just a bit too volatile for me to truly believe in them. But they've got quite a good schedule. I think they're 14th, but I just think in division they could go, I don't know, 4-2, or they could go 2-4, and those teams might swing it.
Yeah, it could be fair to say as well that all the divisional rivals that they've got, their offenses could all take a step forward as well. So it kind of like minimize how great that defense might be as well. So we'll kind of see on that one, but that's just a slight consideration that I'd take into account as well.
Yeah. And again, I was wrong on Bo Nix as well, but I just think after this year, maybe I can kind of admit complete defeat. But I still think there's something indicators that show he wasn't as good. Peyton did a great job scheming him up. Start of the season wasn't great. His numbers against in a clean pocket are bad. Sorry, are good. In a non-clean pocket, they're bad. Pressure, they're bad. When people blitz, they're not great. But all the other scenarios where they're in front of the chains and it's going how Sean Payton wants it to go, he looks really, really good. I'm just not sure. Again, one injury on the offensive line, he's under pressure another 5% of the time. I think that could be a big difference for Bo Nix. But we'll see. In a year's time, we might be coming on here talking about them as division winners and be like, we're completely wrong. Bo Nix is top 14 quarterback or 12 in the NFL. But we'll see. Cool. Who was? Have you got any more teams? Like again, did you do 3 from the AFC or did you do 2 from the AFC? Because you're like 5.
So I've kind of got like 2 together that I kind of club together in like another little tier for the AFC. I can just talk like a brief bit. It's actually the Chargers and the Texans. It's kind of equal likelihood, I would say. The Chargers are very, very similar sort of thing. Good division. Obviously, got the injury to Rashawn Slater. He's been ruled out for the year. The offensive line that was the problem last year anyway. They only added Mekhi Becton to that. There's already going to be some rejigging on that offensive line that wasn't great. How much improvement have they made? If we kind of say that the Broncos do have a good season, the Raiders take a game or 2 off the divisional rivals, do the Chargers kind of slip out and kind of miss out in the same way that the Bengals did? And then you got similar sort of problems for the Texans as well. CJ Stroud, he needs to find his rookie year form. Their offensive line is a mess. The defense looks good on paper, but as we've already said, the volatility of defenses is definitely something that kind of has a factor. They're in a strong division, but only because their division is really bad. Like the Colts obviously named Daniel Jones their starter. The Jags will kind of see what's happening, and then the Titans obviously had the number 1 pick, and for a reason as well. So they could kind of like sleepwalk into winning the division, but they could also like have the fact that the Jags kind of get better and William Cohen and kind of all find how what we've kind of been expecting the Jags to go towards over the past few years, and they could find themselves out of it, because in that division you're going to have to win the division to get in. I don't think they're going to send 2 teams to the playoffs. Kind of had the Chargers and the Texans in kind of an equal kind of footing as like a 3rd team.
Cool. Yeah, at the end we'll try and see if we can decide on a joint 5. But the Chargers were in my 3 from the AFC. Obviously, year 2 under Harbaugh normally goes well. But I do think the the injury, and it sounds like, you can tell me because you'll know more than me, but it sounds like Pipkins will probably start a right tackle.
Yeah, right tackle. Yeah, with Joe Alt going over to the left. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so I think that right tackle position's a worry.
Yeah,
when you're
absolutely.
in this division, they're going to line up Chris Jones there. They're going to line up the Broncos will probably blitz off that side because they blitz so aggressively. Raiders will land Crosby on that side. So for me, I just think that was one thing that I had to think about. And then again, I just think it came down to the talent in the AFC. Obviously, the point of the episode is we're trying to find 5. Doesn't necessarily mean when we do our own, like, who's actually going to make it. If we did an episode about that might be different. But if we're trying to force 5, I think this was the other one for me, and probably the one I was least confident about across the 2 AFC and NFC, just because of how much I like Herbert. And I think the offense could be really good when he's not under pressure. And I'm not really sure what to make of the defense. I love Minter, but on paper, as an outsider, doesn't look as talented as I'd like. But then there's people like Henley, who I've barely watched, that everyone tells me is amazing. So it's like, I'm not quite sure where the defense is going to end. I don't know how you feel about that unit as a whole.
It's almost like the opposite of what it was been like in the previous regime. You know, when the Chargers had like Joe Bosa, Khalil Mack, Derwin James, and it was all like stars and scrubs. It's kind of like they've still got the couple of stars. Like Henley is ready to take a step forward, and I think in 12 months' time there'll be a lot of people in the national media and over there in America talking about him as like one of the better linebackers in the game. Mack is like destroying training camp at times. He's having to like slow down to give the defensive line a chance at times because he's just like wrecking practice by all accounts. And Derwin is most of the way back to being Derwin at this point. Whereas, outside that, I think people that don't watch the Chargers very often or are more casual fans maybe won't be able to name many more defenders on the Chargers. But yeah, I feel like they are kind of more of a sum of their parts. Like, there are a lot of young players on the defensive line, for example, and they're kind of having a really good camp as well. And young corners like Tahib Steele, Cam Hart, brought in Dante Jackson, who isn't a star by any means, but was a really good scheme fit. So it could be the kind of thing where it's, again, like a really good unit like it was last year, but without the star power. So kind of like, say, the opposite of what they were a few years ago, where it was kind of all stars and then like nobodies who actually did nothing.
Yeah, my memory might be failing me, but when we did our draft show, I think you liked Cam Hart, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yeah. He was a big long corner. He didn't have the ball production, but he was really good in coverage and that sort of thing. So yeah, no, really liked him.
Yeah, and Derwin's going to play more in the box, isn't he? Again, like he did last year, I think.
Played a lot of nickel in the second half of the year, and that is kind of how they've been. Not every, not kind of exclusively by any means, but yeah, they've obviously got Aloha Gilman and Elijah Molden as well at safety, so 2 solid safeties, and allowing Derwin to kind of come forward into the box, play more nickel. Obviously, match up on a lot of the good tight ends like Bowers and Kelsey, who are in the division. Evan Engram as well, obviously now with the Broncos. So, yeah, it allows them a lot more flexibility in allowing Derwin to blitz, allowing him to drop back in coverage and corners blitz and things like that. So yeah, it allows him to be quite creative on the defensive side of the ball, which is kind of what he is best at, I would say.
Yeah, agreed. So yeah, like I said, my concerns are more around like top tier defensive talent, and then offensive line still a bit of a question mark.
Yeah,
so it's not like a team that's going to win 6 games. It's just they might win 9 games, and then all the wild cards might have 11 in the AFC.
This is it. Just really briefly on Jesse Minter, just before we move on. If anyone's not seen it, go to the Chargers Twitter page and look at the sim pressure that he ran, where they got a big man interception in the preseason game last week. It was so good. And it was like a third string like defensive lineman. He got a pick and like took it back about 6 yards. He was rumbling. It was really good to see.
Yeah, he's going to be probably the next talk of head coaching candidates from a defensive standpoint. It sounds like, isn't it? That's probably,
if he has another good season and we're another top 10 unit without loads of stars, then yeah, we were really fearing it amongst us in the fan base last year. So it's kind of nice that he didn't get any interviews, to be honest, as much as, like you say, it's coming, I think.
Yeah. Cool. And then, they were my 3 teams from the AFC. And like I said, on the bubble, I obviously did have the Texans. As anyone who listens to this pod knows, I actually, the funny thing is, what I've done is I've picked the Jags to win the division, spoiler alert, on another pod for this podcast. And then I've not taken the Texans out of the playoff. So the Texans have to be a wild card scenario in there. But for me, I do think CJ Stroud will play a lot better. I think the offense will be more organized. It was just all over the place last year. I didn't even know who they were blocking on blitzes and who was coming from where and what the protection rules were. Like when the Chiefs played them twice, and it was clear just from watching the documentary that the YouTube that Chiefs have that, if you just line up someone, basically put 5 people on the front, they didn't have a clue where to block every time. And that's a very basic thing, yeah. And that's all Spags kept doing. He just lined 5 up, and then he blitzed someone who wasn't one of the 5 and dropped 2 of the 5, and every time CJ Stroud's getting hit. So for me, it's just the offensive line. I think the defense, I think if I had to pick, even though the Broncos will be right up there, I think the Texans might be the best defense in the NFL or AFC this year. So I think that is why I lent to not quite putting them as the team to go, but they're definitely on the bubble just because the offensive line could be so bad. And they do have a few injury-prone players, even the ones that are good. And they basically play with reckless abandonment. Like they hit people all over the place. Their safeties do. Alzair does. And even Will Anderson, to be honest, everyone's been talking about in camp how he's put some weight on, and he's not afraid to go into the run game and try and engage someone on the offensive lines. Yeah, I think that's the risk, but I left them in just because I think defense would be great, and I hope CJ takes a bit of a step back up. I left them in. Cool. Let's talk about who's going to replace them then, in order of likelihood. You can go first again. Who was your team where you were thinking about Steelers? I guess number one team to replace the Steelers. Who was it?
It's kind of obvious. It's just the Bengals. If they can have like a really good offense again, which is pretty easy pathway to kind of walk down. Joe Burrow, obviously, we talked last week, elite quarterback, no question about it, one of the best in the game. I know it's like this is the tough part, but if they just don't have a bottom seven defense and sort out Trey Hendrickson's contract and get him on the field this year, it's all there for them with like a bit of Steelers regression. You mentioned it obviously at the beginning, a couple of bouncing balls the wrong way, a couple of weird results, obviously losing to the Patriots in week one, that sort of stuff, and they kind of make it, with a bit of regression from those around them. And we've got a couple of candidates, 2 or 3 candidates, maybe even 4, that, well, they're there in the divisions of the ones that were saying the locks, aren't they? So they've kind of got a pathway to be a wildcard team straight away. However, if not, then if they miss the playoffs again, Zach Taylor's gone, surely. And there's got to be more questions raised about Burrow as well, isn't there? He's going to miss the playoffs 3 years in a row. But so they kind of need to make it as well. It's like jobs on the line. So kind of, does that motivate them then to make it, in short?
Yeah, so for listeners, I sent you the questions for these episodes quite a while ago, so I pre-planned just in case I didn't know when we were going to do them. And they were my number one team until I watched preseason games and I see an offensive line that I thought was going to be really good, absolutely getting whooped. Hilarious clips of Joe Burrow just sprinting around, getting absolutely nailed in preseason. I will say one thing, the one clip everyone's talking about where they blame the offensive line, when Warren Sharp's retweeted this about 18 times. The quarterback is completely to blame, where he's just running around rather than throwing it away and just getting nailed in the backfield. And he's like, he wrote poor Joe Burrow. And I'm like, he is literally caused
it's
that.
Preseason, man, just throw it away. It's fine.
However, the rest of the game, there was a lot of pressure on him, which is probably why he did that. So that plus the fact they might have the worst run defense I've seen. Now, again, we can only go off preseason, but they're getting whooped. We keep making jokes on this pod from Patrick of Tanner McKee as the next Tom Brady if he plays the Bengals defense every week. So I moved them down to second. Again, now I have put them in my top 3 of who's going to replace those 3 teams. But I put them at second more. I don't think they can win the division and probably a 10-win team. But I think at best they are, for me, an 11-win team. And I just think I've gone with probably finish at about 10, just because I just don't trust the defense. And the offensive line I kept saying was the best he's had. And then it just hasn't looked good early, but we'll see what it looks like early in the season. But yeah, the offense will be great. The benefit of him playing in the preseason is potentially they start faster. They've never done this before. They've never played starters. We'll see if it makes a difference. It might just be who they are, but we'll see. It could just be a Zach Taylor thing, but we'll find out. And their strength of schedule is actually quite good compared to other teams in the list I've got. It's like bang in middle of the league. And a lot of that will be having to play the Ravens twice. If they didn't play the Ravens twice, they'd be probably a top 10, 12 schedule in the NFL. Yeah, it's all on the offense. And then I think maybe having a good to elite third down passing defense just because of Trey Hendrickson and Stewart. But if that doesn't come to fruition, then I think they're going to have to score 30 points to win every game, which is not the place you want to be. But yeah, I did put them in as my second team. Cool. My first team is a team I've already hinted at, who I put to win the division just because I want to try and stay semi-consistent. I don't want to have 5 different takes and then just clip up the one that makes me look right. But I have gone with the Jacksonville Jaguars for me as the most likely, because I think they are the only team out of my list that can win the division. I don't think the Bengals will win the division. I don't think my third team will win the division. Well, I think the Jags can. They got the 6th easiest schedule in the NFL. I think the Colts could be super, super bad in that division. I'm a bit higher on the Titans, which we might talk about in a minute, but I think there's some chance they can win it. We spoke about in the other episodes that Liam Cohen, coach that I love. Again, he's a head coach. Is he going to be good? We don't know, but I think the offense that he will call will be very, very good. All the noise in camp is good. I think they've done well with the Travis Hunter stuff of like not trying to just do everything that he wants, and they've kind of said no. limited snaps on offense. You're an elite corner. Obviously, Brian Thomas looks incredible from all the clips we've been seeing. And I'm just a Trevor Lawrence fan still. So I've gone for them, mainly again, because I think they have got an easier slate of games. And I just think sneaky suspicion Liam Cohen could be the best head coach out of the teams I'm going to talk about in this little bubble. So yeah, I've gone for the Jags.
Yeah, the Jags are my second team as well. It kind of goes back to what I was saying, a little bit of like the fact that the Texans might have some sort of regression, there's some question marks over them. And like you say, Liam Cohen could be the guy to actually make Trevor Lawrence the Trevor Lawrence that we all thought he was going to be a few years ago when he's coming out of Clemson. And Brian Thomas should have some more help with Travis Hunter, at least part-time on that side of the ball. And if he can be like an elite corner who makes a difference, then again, that's going to elevate the D, because like Tyson Campbell is a really good corner on the other side as well. And then they've got a pass rush as well. So like in a way, they're kind of like similar to the Bengals, but like it's the defense that's kind of like got to bring up the offense, and the offense isn't quite as good as the Bengals, but it could be good. So if they're like, I don't know, above average in both, then they've got a good chance of unseating the Texans. If the Texans offensive line kind of, is a massive problem for CJ Stroud and the whole franchise as a whole. Again, like the teams have got to win the division, like you say, but the Texans aren't locked into winning that division by any stretch of the imagination. If the Jags put it together, they could definitely do it. So yeah, I agree there. They're number 2 for me.
Yeah, and going back to the schedule as well, their start's not great, but they've got the easiest schedule in the NFL for the last 6 weeks. The AFC's so good, or so kind of middle heavy, where like from like 10 to 4, the teams are quite similar, that I think that's when you don't want to be playing those 1 seed chasing teams. You don't want to play the Bills, the Ravens. You don't want to play, the 49ers, Eagles, etc. So yeah, I just think the fact they've got the easiest end of season schedule with a lot of division games, that I think they can win. I think they should be there, and I think they've got 2 chances. I think they could be the 7th seed, and I think they could be the division winner. So just 2 bites at it for me. Cool. Like I said, I've got a third team of my 5 from the AFC. I know we'll decide yours maybe at the end once we spoke AFC and NFC. So I don't mind going first with who I put, and this might be the surprise one. I was struggling with my last team across both conferences, and I've gone with this team for some quarterback love. So I've gone with Drake May and the New England Patriots.
Oh, wow. Okay.
As the team, as my surprise team. They got the second easiest schedule in the NFL, easiest. They actually had a lot of the opposite stuff to the Steelers. They had a lot of turnover differential bad luck in terms of fumbles not recovered. They didn't force many turnovers. They actually had the most injuries on the defensive line of any AFC team last year. A lot of that was Christian Barmore with the blood clots, obviously. But I think there's some like instant statistical regression in a good way. I think the head coach was a disaster last year. And Vrabel, interesting character, but definitely good leader of people and organizer, and sets the standards. I think they'll be good from that regard. And I think the offense will be much better. It's not great, but the offensive line will be better. Skill position's not great, but I think it'll be better. And I just think Drake May was a lot closer to Jaden Daniels' level than he was Caleb Williams' level. And I think he might take another step up and just be a really, really good player. I kind of wish they chose a different OC, but I might be wrong. And Josh McDaniels, maybe he'll definitely know what to do and know how to organize the offense, and they'll be sound. It's just, will he be aggressive enough? For me, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, I just think with their schedule and some of those regression points, I think the defense generally could be really good, and I think Drake May could carry the offense. Then next year's the year where maybe they get whooped in the playoffs in my scenario, and then they say, right, we need to get him a starting left tackle, we need to get him a center, and we need to get him a wide receiver too, and then we'll go from there. But yeah, for me, I struggled with 5. They were my 5th out of all across both conferences, but I just snuck them in because of the schedule and because of Drake.
Interesting. I don't think you're wrong. Like, Drake May is obviously a very, very talented. No, but that's because I'm starting from a really low point. So as I said before we started recording, I've kind of got a section in my notes of like, well, it says below this line, these teams will certainly not make the playoffs, of which the AFC is quite a few. It's 5 teams, of which I've got the Browns obviously bottom of that list, the Colts and the Patriots. So I've got the Patriots like well within that zone of just teams that I just can't. I just don't. As much as like I don't disagree with much of what you're saying, I just think the first year of Vrabel could be a bit more like putting out fires, repairing the damage of like what was like a catastrophic year last year. They've got the quarterback. There's question marks over Will Campbell. Can he be a good tier left tackle? We don't know that yet. In the NFL skill position, I'm not sure. I kind of believe in. Like I say, I don't disagree that they might be better, but
hey, Diggs has looked good in camp since his off-season boat dramas.
But how long is that going to last? If I suppose he's going to get all the balls, isn't he? So he's not going to be unhappy about that. Jalen Polk obviously is injured now; he's out for the year, which is a bit of a blow. And then the defense will have some talent, and like you say, Vrabel will get things going. But is it enough to like raise them to the point where they're potentially going to win 10 games? Even with an easy schedule, I just can't see it, to be honest. Like I say, I've got the Jets ahead of them as like more likely.
Yeah.
I don't think the Jets are going to make the playoffs either.
When Trayvon Henderson is better than Jahmyr Gibbs, it's just, the offense is just going to be nice. Yeah. They were my surprise package.
It might show some green shoots, you know.
Yeah, I knew we'd have a couple of similar teams because we think similarly. So I was like, we can't be all the same. So I've gone for the Patriots. Who are your kind of honorable mentions as like the next team or teams that you've considered?
Yeah, my other teams that are like above this line that I've just been talking about are the Dolphins and the Raiders. I feel like the off season that the Dolphins has had is weird. Like one of the weirdest off seasons, that I can remember in recent time. They've got a GM and a head coach on the hot seat, and they've done very little to improve their prospects of keeping their jobs from my point of view.
Agree. Yeah.
But if the O-line is passable, if Tua can stay healthy, because McDaniel's record with Tua healthy is pretty reasonable. You know, you can't really take that away from him. And if the offense finds some sort of explosivity again, they've got a softer schedule as well. So they've got the AFC South, the Browns, the Steelers, obviously the Patriots and Jets twice, teams that I don't think have got a chance of making the playoffs.
Yeah.
Could they sneak the second spot in a bad division? Maybe. So they're kind of on the bubble. And the Raiders, we kind of talked about the AFC West quite a lot now. So you kind of rehashing a lot of the things I've already said. Gino and Pete Carroll are massive upgrades from what they had at head coach and quarterback last year. Yeah. If Ashton Jennings is kind of what were you saying about Trayvon Henderson, if Ashton Jennings is that, then he's the guy. I've been picking him a lot in fantasy as well, so I kind of hope he is, apart from when he played the Chargers. Brock Bowers obviously is a superstar already. Yeah. Like I said, they're not going to go 0-6 in the division, like I said before. So if they kind of surprise the Chargers, surprise the Broncos, maybe take one off the Chiefs, who knows? And then, they've got all the games that they can win. The Raiders could make the playoffs if a lot goes for them. I'm not going to, they are my last team that I think could, but they could.
Yeah, I had the Raiders, Patriots, obviously, and then another team above the Dolphins. But yeah, I think the Raiders definitely have got win with a chance. If they start strong, nick a couple of games against the Broncos and Chiefs, they could definitely sneak in. But yeah, I'm not a Dolphins believer this year. But I think it's probably just some.
I don't really think I am, but yeah.
True, very true. There's one team you haven't mentioned who are obviously in your no-go list that I put as, so they're below obviously the Patriots. They're not going to make the playoffs, but in terms of likelihood, I actually below the Raiders or with the Raiders, same tier. I had the Titans.
Yeah, you said this earlier. You kind of alluded to it, didn't you?
Yeah, I love the Cam Ward pick. I think he's very underrated in terms of where people are talking about him. The offensive line, I think, could be really, really, really good. And I think that does make a difference in the AFC because there's some good pass rushers on their slate of games this season. Calvin Ridley's a player I've always really liked. I'd like if they had one more weapon for Cam Ward with him, but, that can't fix everything in one off season. And then the defense, for some strange reason last year, they decided to spend loads of money. And it didn't really make sense because they were going to be bad. But they've still got players like L'Jarius Sneed and Jeffrey Simmons. And, they've drafted some young players to go alongside that as well in the last 2 years. And again, easier division for me, easier schedule because they were terrible last year. Yeah, I just think that gives them what I would probably say is like a puncher's chance. I don't think they'll do it. But I think there'll be a team where they might be like, oh, wow, they got 7 or 8 wins. And, until the end when they lost 3 in a row, they were in the with a shot. And then they'll just need to add that next level of talent to the offense, I think, for Cam Ward. But yeah, I think they'll be a fun team at least.
I don't think you're too wide of the mark. Obviously, I've not got them in that sort of category. Again, I don't kind of disagree. They are the sort of team that you round at your mates on, I don't know, week 13 or something like that, and it says on Sky Sports in the hunt, and it says the Titans, and you turn to your mates like, what? Yeah, like you say, they've won 6 games by that point, and they're kind of hanging on by a thread. If they put it together, they've got some green shoots, like I say, again, and maybe a year away. Maybe if we're doing this pod in a year's time, we could maybe be looking at them being in the mix with the Jags and Texans as like potential division winners in a poor division again.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, year 2 of Cam Ward as well at that point. So yeah, we'll see. But I think that division might be quite fun in terms of teams beating each other, but it might not be the best quality.
The worst quality.
Cool. Let's go to the NFC then, because we are not going to hit my 60-minute dedeline.
We never do.
NFC then, the teams that made the playoffs. I forgot they had 15 wins, but the Lions 15-2, Eagles 14-3. Then it kind of goes down to the same scenario you had in the AFC, where the division winners had less wins. The Bucks and Rams both 10-7 as division winners, and then the Vikings 14-3, Commanders 12-5, and then last but not least, the Packers came in at 11-6. And I kind of forgot they actually were 7th seed. I thought they missed the playoffs, but then it was just a bit of a disaster year for them with with injuries. Which of those did you describe as have as playoff locks? And then we'll go on to teams most likely to go out.
Because the NFC is so much more open, I have actually only got one playoff lock, which is the Eagles.
Okay. Yeah, I had the Eagles
which
and Lions.
might be, I don't know if that's being a bit ungenerous, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, they would be. If I could pick any team not to make the playoffs, it would be that for my pure enjoyment. It would be the Eagles, just to annoy Patrick and to get one over on him on last season. But there we go. Let's go in order then of the teams out of that list we think are most likely to drop out. I think we might have different ones for this one because NFC's a bit more bunched together. Who was your first team?
My first team's the Bucks.
Oh, wow.
I'm not saying they're a bad team, but this is like a not great team in a very, very meh division, isn't it? And it's not that the division is like the AFC West where all four teams could make it and things like that. It's kind of like they're not great. And if like one team is slightly better, they could, because again, they're not going to send like more than two teams to the playoffs, I don't think. So could they kind of get usurped by the Falcons or something like that? Well, it has to be the Falcons because the other two teams are definitely not making it. But it's that kind of thinking, really. And the reason why I came to that conclusion is Liam Cohen does obviously a loss, as we've kind of talked about when we were talking about with the Jags, and they did this last year with Dave Canales as well. It's like then they've got to replace another OC again, and just this like constant churn of offensive coordinators is pretty hard to overcome, I would say, especially when you've got a non-elite quarterback, which Baker's like, he's good, right? And I think we both like can say that the journey he's been on for his NFL career is pretty remarkable. And now he's doing it with like Chris Godwin being injured every 2 minutes. What we're getting towards late career Mike Evans, and we know the cliff will come at some point. As much as they're like insulating themselves against that with Emeka Egbuka, and obviously Jalen Millen was pretty decent last year. It kind of just feels like it's got not the firmest foundations for me because of this turnover. So it's that kind of thinking, really. It's like I just find it hard to kind of fully believe in the Bucks.
Yeah, see, they weren't in my two teams because again, I've got my five, so I've got two NFC teams. They weren't in there, but they were my honourable mention because I think there's a lot of good NFC teams. Whereas I think they just have I think they are my favourite still to win the division, but they have that chance where it's just probably a straight shootout between two teams, and if they lose that shootout, it wouldn't surprise me if they just didn't have enough wins to catch the North teams up in the wildcard race.
Yeah.
But I did have them as my first team out of my two that are actually out, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think some of that is because their schedule's a bit easier and their division's easier. So I think they'll win some easier games. But the offense, like you said, with Liam Cohen is a really big worry. I think they missed their opportunity. There was talk of it that they could have offered him that job and got rid of Bowles, but it felt awkward to do that for 4 division wins, I think, in a row. But that probably was their chance where they could have done that, or maybe they'd been better off missing the playoffs, putting Liam Cohen in and moving on from there. Because you're right, it can't be easy to just churn offensive coordinators. Now, the benefit for this year is it's the guy already knows the scheme and he's already familiar with Baker and they've already worked together, so that makes it a little bit easier. But yeah, I just think they've added some good players. I think Reddick could be a good reclamation project. Egbuka we mentioned. I think the offensive line will be good. So yeah, I had them still in, but mainly that's probably more about the division than it is them compared to the other NFC teams, I think.
Yeah, we'll come on to maybe a couple of teams that have got like some coaching churn, and it's much as like, the guy that's an internal hire like knows the quarterback and things like that, but it's difficult to be the play caller as well and like have that extra responsibility. It doesn't mean, especially when you're going from an elite play caller to someone who's never done it before, which is the case for another team that I might talk about soon.
Cool. I'll go to my first team then. I struggled with my 1 and 2. I could have put them in any order, to be honest, but I'll go with this team because I normally only say good things about them. So I did struggle with this, but I've gone with the Vikings as my first team out. We spoke about this on the preview episode for this division, but it's crazy. They won 14 games. Now their win total is like 8.5, whatever it is, which is mental. But I do think there's some signs of it. They've got a top 5 hardest schedule in the NFL. They've got, as Warren Sharp puts on his website about rest differential, they've got a lot of awful rest games where they're playing off 5-6 days and the other team have got 8 or 9 or 7 or whatever. So that's an issue. They were 9-1 in, games 10 points or less last year. And that's a classic sort of regression flag that a couple of those bounce the other way with a novice quarterback, in a different position, especially at the start of the season. They came out quite well last year, had a bit of a dip in the middle, and then they finished strong. I think this year, if they don't start strong because of the QB, I think it'll be hard for them to catch up compared to last year. And then the other thing was, so they were number 1 in the NFL, rushing only 3. and they were also number 1 in the NFL rushing 6 or more, which is Brian Flores at his peak. But listening to the Athletic Football Show and Robert Mays did his breakdown of what he's heard was those sim pressures and that kind of approach. Basically, he said that everyone he spoke to was like, this is the way defense is going, and all the offensive people he spoke to is like Spags, Flores, those two styles, the styles we need to work out how to play offense against, and to basically stop them lining the front up to dictate what we're doing on offense before the snap. That was he said that was the common theme that most offensive guys were saying. I just think, it's a boom or bust style of defense. It's a new quarterback on offense. And even though I love O'Connell, I just think there's some classic signs there. And then also, as much as I love him, Justin Jefferson keeps getting these hamstring injuries. And Addison's going to miss 3 games.
Yeah.
He's had 3 driving issues. And I can't speak as a Rashee Rice jersey behind me. But I think there's some volatility that the offensive weapons aren't as good as I would hope, just because if Jefferson misses 7-8 games, Addison misses 5 games. I'm not sure what's behind them is great in a hard conference. So yeah, I've gone for Vikings.
Yeah, they're looking to trade for a receiver by all accounts, aren't they? Which again adds in another question mark to the whole mix as well. And the biggest question mark for me is it's JJ McCarthy. It's a tough division. I'm maybe more of you're not a Kevin O'Connell guy, but I'm maybe more kind of saying, Kevin O'Connell will make it all right.
Yeah, I get that.
They'll be fine. Plus, I probably didn't, cover this up too easily, but I have the Lions ahead of them in terms of likelihood. So I think that I don't know. I feel like because, like you say, I see what you're saying about the offenses want to kind of play against Brian Flores, but you still got to be able to do it. It's easy to plan. Also, you say you want to plan, but it's ferocious, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. I just wish they'd bought what I said in the preview for the division. I wish they'd signed one corner. I don't feel like they needed to go and spend money on Javon Hargrave. I think let's just get a corner, and then Brian Flores doesn't have to. He doesn't have to play crazy up front on every snap. He can trust his corners to cover. But at the moment, he's just we've got no chance of covering back here, so let's just go mental.
He probably would anyway, to be honest.
Yeah, probably, yeah. But yeah, you're right. I do love Kevin O'Connell, but there's always that one surprise team, and it just sounds like I've gone for one NFC North team, and maybe it leads us on to you talking about your NFC North team.
So I'll talk about that next because we're kind of talking over the subject anyway. But Lions are actually my 3rd team. I do actually have another team at number 2.
Okay.
I've kind of already talked about the kind of churn that it's difficult to go through. And obviously you've got now 2 head coaches that have come from this staff in Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. That's going to be really difficult to replace just off the bat, but they're 2 elite play callers. And like I say, even though they've promoted from within, it's difficult to kind of replace them as play callers, especially Ben Johnson. He's got so much press and kind of coverage over the past year to 2 years of how good this guy is. And, as much as I'm not saying that John Morton and Kevin Shepherd can't be great, or won't be great. And it definitely is a massive plus that Dan Campbell's still there and he's kind of got such a unique and obviously massively positive leadership style. He's kind of bringing everyone with him. It's just really difficult to overcome that churn. And maybe it is being overplayed. Maybe, a lot of the national media and myself and other people that are talking about this and maybe overplaying it. But again, it's a tough division. Like I say, I kind of believe in the Vikings a little bit more than what you're saying by the sounds of it. We probably both think that the Bears are going to be a little bit better as well. The Packers are still going to be good. The Packers could be really good this year. And again, it's a little bit like the AFC West. It's there's going to be no kind of bad team in this division that kind of guarantees anyone 2 wins. It's going to be tough. It's physical. It's not as outside as it should be in the North because obviously they've got dome stadiums in Detroit and Minnesota now. But, it's hard, especially in playing in the winter games. They kind of become a leveler, don't they, in terms of especially get a snow game or 2 as well, or a super rainy game. I just think there's some fragility to the Lions in terms of the infrastructure. And as much as they're not going to be bad by any means, they're probably not going to win 15 games again either. And how far is the ball?
Yeah, on quarterback on Netflix, Jared Goff tried to distance himself from the outside. He said I barely played outside because I played in California. Just okay, but every single actual statistic is not good outside, whether you pretend it to be or not. And he had 3 games last year it was outside, and I think it's 10 or 11 this year. So I know that sounds like a completely random thing, but that could actually make a difference of 3 games where he doesn't play well and they go from a 15-win team to a 11 or 12 and then a couple of missed field goals. Okay, we've won 10 games and all the wildcard teams have got a better tiebreaker and we're 8th. It's there's definitely more volatility. And I think Ben Johnson, you can't, similar to Liam Cohen, you can't say Ben Johnson's amazing for the Bears and not go, okay, that's probably going to hinder the Lions. It kind of has to work 2 ways. So yeah. They were on my honorable mentions. I kept them in. I actually kept them in as a lock just because the schedule was easier than it is for the other top teams. But yeah, there's definitely some fragility, like you said, for the Lions. Who was your second team? So I think we might have the same. We could have the same second team.
The Commanders is my second team. Is that the same
We
team?
do have the same second team. Yeah.
I obviously mentioned like cliff edges and things like when I was talking about Mike Evans and stuff like that. And I can't remember which team you said it was the super old team in the AFC, but Washington are like super old from top to bottom, offense, defense, both sides of the ball. There's a lot of cliff edges coming for this this team, and if they all come at the same time, they obviously overachieved last year as it is, and it could just be that the bottom just falls out of this. As much as he was great, and as much as like he's getting a lot of coverage, and it's all well deserved, Jaden Daniels could regress. We saw it with CJ Stroud, and they had a lot of the kind of stats that you were talking about earlier that could regress to the mean as well. Like their fourth down conversion rate was insane last year. Yeah, exactly. That's just not going to happen again, is it?
No.
And there's other things that could regress to the mean as well. Like, was it the Bears game when they won on the Hail Mary when it bounced off someone, and was it Noah Brown in the back of the end zone just like went straight to him? It's just like, do they get those wins again? And then you can take into account the division. Obviously, the Eagles, I'm saying there's a lot. It's pretty, obvious that they're going to make the playoffs unless catastrophic things happen. We talked about the Cowboys before. Obviously, I've got Dak really high up in my quarterback rankings, and pretty similar to how we're talking about the AFC North with like the Browns. Like the Giants' defense is going to be really good, even if the offense isn't going to be good. So again, all these things kind of add together. I'm not saying the Commanders will turn into a pumpkin, but there's definitely like areas where they definitely could, and there could be a lot of regression in certain ways. So I think there's more fragility again for the Commanders than maybe some people are talking about.
Yeah, they were 8-2 in one-score games. That 87%.
That's another thing. Yeah.
Yeah, 87% on fourth downs, and they were not turnover. They didn't force many turnovers, but if you look at fumble luck as they chart it, how many times did someone recover a fumble? Basically, they were second in the NFL. Just like prime regression stats, even if they're still good.
Huge.
And then it was the Steelers defense that I mentioned that was old. The offense is quite young, but for Washington, you're right. They're literally the oldest team. They've got young quarterbacks. Everyone thinks they're young, but the actual rest of the team is old, which is crazy. And you've got the Terry McLaurin stuff, which should get sorted out, but maybe not. The running back room has been a bit of a weird situation. Now they're going with like a fourth or fifth rounder. There is a bit of churn on the team overall as well. And as much as he did an incredible job last year, before the season, I was a bit like, I'm not sure Dan Quinn was the right guy. So I can't, a year later, just because they're very good at fourth downs and one-score games, I can't just be like, I think he's the right choice, because I'm still a bit concerned that, is the offense with Cliff and him as the head coach going to be great 2 years in a row? I'm not sure. I think Jaden might be the equalizer, but if he's not, then yeah. And then one of the concerns coming out about him as well, if you ignore the play, was he's slight, he runs a lot, gets hit. He doesn't throw on the move, he runs on the move. Like, he played every game last year. So if that regresses even to 2 games where he's off because he's a running quarterback, that happens, then the team's going to struggle. So they were my team that I had out.
Yeah,
cool. Any other teams you wanted to mention potentially on the out? Like I said, I had 2 NFC teams, 3 AFC, so I've done my 2. Is there any other teams you want to mention quickly before we go on?
There's no one that I'm kind of like, they're kind of really severely on the bubble we've talked about, obviously. But I think I've not mentioned the Packers or the Rams. I don't think they're playoff locks, but it's not like something that I'd be like nailed on. They're in with a good chance of missing out, I would say.
Yeah, I love the Packers. I'm really high on them this year. So I think they'd be one of my least likelier ones to drop out for me. And for Rams, it's probably just injuries. If they're healthy, they'll probably make it. If they're injured, they won't.
Obviously, yeah.
The epidural, the famous epidural in your back, which is great when you're an athlete. Cool. Let's talk about teams that could replace these NFC teams. And like I said, I've got 2. So I've got 2 clear teams, and then two honorable mentions. But why don't you go first? Who's the team you had? I think we might have the same number 1.
This is the most obvious one of the whole episode. I think the 49ers are going to make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, agreed.
It's nailed on. Like, they've got the easiest schedule in the league.
By a mile.
By a mile, isn't it? Yeah, I was going to say. I know you've obviously been looking into it, so I thought you might be able to confirm that. And I mean, as much as like they have lost a bit of star power, obviously no Debo, Ayuk's injured, they can't be as hurt again, surely. Surely, like, just law of averages. I'm saying it's a Chargers fan, so maybe I should kind of not say this, but they surely can't be as injured as this. Again, they've still got stars as well. Kittle, CMC if he doesn't get injured. Robert Saleh's back in town as well, which is, I think, a really positive thing for them. I think he's one of those coaches that's a better coordinator than he is a head coach. He was so good as a defensive coordinator, and that's why he got the Jets job. Ricky Pearsall is back from being shot and a bit of an up and down rookie season, and is apparently looking great in training camp as well. It's just one of those things where it is a super tough division. If they can kind of squeeze out wins against, well, everyone really, but in particular, make a bad team out of the Cardinals, for example, go 2-0 against them, kind of gives you a bit of a leg up. Steal the game against the Rams, steal the game against the Seahawks. You're already halfway there, and then obviously you've got the easy schedule to kind of make up the rest of that. I think. I might not say they're nailed on to win the West, but I do think they'll make a. Because I think, like I said at the beginning, this division could send 3 teams to the playoffs quite easily.
Yeah, agreed on all that. They were the clear number 1 choice for me. Now it's funny. I think they'll make the playoffs because I put them on this list, but I don't think they'll be like, maybe they won't be one of the 7 best teams. But I think the schedule is that good.
Yeah,
even if they're the 9th best team, that they could easily have the 5th best record because of what their schedule was like. Because I just think there's a chance the NFC North could all just kill each other for wins. And I know we are high on the West, but the non-West games that the 49ers play are really, really easy. So their like slate of quarterbacks, when you look at it, is like mental. The non-division quarterbacks they play are just so easy. 49ers.
It sort of reminds me of the Chargers last year a little bit, playing a bit of a softer schedule from a 4th place position, good head coach, kind of not facing the toughest quarterbacks, like you say, and we see how that went.
Yeah, true. 11 wins as well. That's like similar where they could fall, to be honest. And I think their offense might be worse because of the injuries on the wide receiver position, and obviously Trent Williams another year. CMC apparently is healthy, but you never know. But I think the defense with Salah, with those picks on the defensive line in the draft, I think their defense will be really, really good. Yeah. So yeah, they were an easy one for me. My second team, I don't know if you can have this second team, but you do love the quarterback. But I've actually gone with Dallas as my second team. I've got 2 teams in. I've gone with Old Faithful. Basically, not exciting. I've not gone for a Patriots pick. I've gone for the 49ers and the Cowboys, 2 of the biggest teams in the world. Great. But yeah, they have got a hard schedule. They turnover luck last year they were really bad at. So that's one regression statistic. But there's not really much else to go at from that standpoint. I just think that the change in coaching in terms of, I just hated Mike McCarthy. I think it had gone stale. I don't know if Schottenheimer's going to be great, but everyone said he's a good leader, at least. And I think the top tier talent on the roster is so good that I think they'll sneak into the playoffs. Obviously, Dak's a very good player. I think Micah Parsons will probably be the highest paid defender one day before the season starts. Pickens, I love probably more than most. He's my draft crush for the Chiefs. And CeeDee Lamb is an elite player. So for me, I think the elite talent, and there's other names as well. Left tackle's a worry, but I think that there's enough good players for me that I just think it'll probably more of a scraping because they have got a hard schedule. I don't think they're going to win 13 games, but I think they'll be that team that needs to win last game of the season. Maybe they're the Sunday night game. They win, they're in, and then we'll see what happens on the playoffs. See if they get a running back to take a direct snap or something. But yeah, I've gone with Dallas.
The Cowboys are actually my 3rd most likely team, so my number 3 team, and pretty much nailing all the points that I've got for myself. To be fair, I completely agree. Parsons will re-sign. All the shenanigans that they need not have. That's not going to do anything. I don't think anyone's going to trade for him. It's too expensive, as we've probably talked about before. And like I say, the high end talent is probably going to drag them over the line, and they probably need a bit of Washington regression. But we've talked about how that's got quite a few areas where that's likely, and they could be the biggest beneficiary of it. Really, like you say, the schedule is tough, but that's the only thing that really gives me pause. Otherwise, I think they could be right there at the end of the season.
Yeah, Joe Jones gives me a bit of pause, but that's more for like for actually winning anything. But yeah, to get to the playoffs,
I mean they'll be losing in the first round. Like there's no question, but they could make it in, and that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about Super Bowl contenders, are we?
No, exactly. Yeah, and I think this is also I want to happen. I do think it's more fun when they're in. Eagles, 49ers game. Eagles or 49ers, the rivalry is quite good. I do love Dak. I'd really like to see him win He's not going to win a Super Bowl, I don't think, personally, in Dallas, but I'd love to see him have a really tough away game in the first round and win it. And then, they lose in the second round. But to have that off his back of winning that big playoff game as someone who likes him, I think that would be quite cool. So, we'll see. Who are your other candidates that you wanted to talk about that could replace those teams?
So my second team is really just a corresponding move for the Bucs, and it's just the Falcons, really. Obviously, I can't talk down the Bucs that much without having the team that's going to win the division. So it's not, again, it's kind of the same sort of thing really, but on the opposite, they're not a great team, but they could win the division, and therefore they're in, aren't they? So the Saints are going to be bad. Panthers are going to be better. Maybe a little bit like your Titans kind of thinking maybe about the Panthers for me. I'm still a Bryce guy, so can't talk the Panthers down fully. They're not going to be good, though, I would say. But, the Falcons can trip over themselves year after year, and the Bucs can make the playoffs, or they can actually do something, which I feel like they kind of did last year in drafting Michael Penix. Obviously, he's going to be there. He's going to be aggressive. He's going to make the throws that Kirk couldn't make, because we all saw in quarterback, Kirk literally didn't have an arm towards the end of the year, and it showed. But if they can kind of square away 3 or 4 wins against the Panthers and the Saints, again, they're halfway there already. Obviously, big games against the Bucs, come out on top of them, and then they've got the tiebreaker. And then again, the schedule's super kind. They've got the AFC East, the Dolphins, the Jets, obviously the Colts from the AFC South. Again, they just need to win a few of these games, and then they're pretty much there. So it's they've got the pathway. If the Bucs do them fall, they've got the pathway to them making it. So it's kind of just the corresponding move for the Bucs being my number 1 most likely team to drop out. Really,
yeah, they're my second honorable mention, just because again division reasons. Really, still as always worried about their defense, even with that ridiculous trade up in the first round. And they've I think Caleb McGarry got carted off when I was doing my notes yesterday. They've got a new center and a new right tackle for the season, and right tackle is obviously super important because it's a left-handed quarterback. So yeah, they were on my list, but for division reasons. But that's why I kind of did lean with the Bucs still winning it, because I'm just not 100% sold on them and the Falcons. The only other team on my list was my first honorable mention was going back to the NFC West. I put the Seahawks as mine. Obviously, very, very, I would describe as a steady program now. They've kind of got their hands on everything there and that kind of stuff. Mike McDonald's extremely good. I did obviously recently watch them walk my team up and down the field in a preseason game, which was fun. And relatively easy schedule. I'm not as high on the Cardinals as some, so I think they could win a couple of division games off the bat there. And again, I think the offensive line should be better in this scheme, where he's going to be more kind of boots and RPOs and zone runs, not as many just drop back on 1st and 10 and get your quarterback to try to sling it everywhere. So yeah, they just missed out for me, but I did really consider them because I think Mike McDonald is an incredible coach, and I think the defense could be one of the best. It probably won't be Eagles. I think Eagles won't be as good this year, but probably won't be Eagles level good, but I think it could be the 2nd or 3rd best in the NFC for sure.
I've kind of got the Seahawks and Cardinals kind of clubbed in a similar sort of really in a similar sort of way. I was talking about the Chargers and the Texans missing out. I've got these as sort of kind of have an outside chance of making it. I didn't have them below my line of teams that can't win enough games to get in the playoffs. I think they're kind of similar sort of thing. They're kind of finding their place in the NFL hierarchy under young coaches. Like say you've talked about Mike McDonald. I would say that Jonathan Gannon doesn't get enough praise, and Drew Petzing, their offensive coordinator, is doing some good things as well, even if I'm not the biggest Kyler guy in the world. So yeah, I think they've both got enough to kind of, if things fall for them, they kind of sneak in the 7th seed, but I'm not super confident on it either for either team. Maybe a year away for both.
What's the answer to the question of which quarterback do you believe in more out of those two teams, Sam Darnold or Kyler Murray? For one season, let's finish 7th in the NFC.
I mean, you can do more with Kyler, I guess, because of his running ability. But I'm not, as you can tell by the tone of my voice, I'm not super confident on that. Because Darnold's had the recent better season, but
yes,
the theory of Kyler is obviously better than the theory of Darnold, I guess.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably Kyler for me, but with the asterisks of he's definitely more likely to get hurt because that's just who he is. But yeah, that's why I really struggle with the Cardinals defense. They spent some money on it. We did it on the preview, but I was just out on it. I think they might win 3 or 4 games again, and just. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not as into the Cardinals. Mike McDonald's my defensive coordinator turned head coach crush. That I wouldn't mind being a Chiefs head coach when Andy retires one day. But
yeah, McDonald is really good.
He is really, really good. Any other teams you wanted to mention as honourable mentions to get in, or is that your lot?
That's it. I mean, I've got the Bears, Panthers, Giants, and Saints as no chance.
Well, I could do a 20-minute monologue on if the Saints start Spencer Rattler, I believe in them, but I think Tyler Shuck might play too many games for me to trust that. But yeah, no, they were the only teams that I had as well. Falcons, by the way, 4th easiest schedule as well. I know we didn't mention that earlier, but I was looking now. I was definitely got a chance if Penix can play as well as he did for those 2 games that he did for last year. Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, the title of the episode is 5 in, 5 out. So we need to have our 5 in, 5 out. So we're gonna make you decide. To confirm, I've gone for the think I'm not going to change it. I've gone for the Steelers, Chargers, and Broncos out in the AFC being replaced by the infamous pick of the Patriots. I'm not gonna regret, I'm sure, as soon as that happens. The Bengals and then the Jags. And then in the NFC, I've got the Commanders out and the Vikings out. And replacing them, I've gone for Old Faithful of Dallas and San Francisco. So they're my 5 in, 5 out. In terms of like what I'd actually predict, I think 4. I think it might be 2 and 2 this year. But if we're going to be forced to pick 5 by me, that's my 5. For 5, I've had to push you across the board.
Yeah, I'll go for 2 for the AFC as well. I think the Steelers and Broncos, I think I'd be pretty confident in saying they'll miss out. And then, like you say, being replaced by my top 2 of the Bengals and the Jags. I don't know. I'm not like the homer guy for the Chargers. I know they've got them on my 3rd, and it kind of seems like I'm leaving them out because of that. But there is a world where they still have a really good season and probably have the same sort of record with a much tougher schedule, and like we're feeling pretty good about it. But Rashawn Slater's not playing for another year, so that is fragile in that sense as well.
I'd be disappointed in you if you didn't leave your team in. So I'm glad you I'm glad you left them in.
It's not with like full confidence, but yeah, I think also we'll kind of talk about the NFC a little bit more. I mean, I think, like you said, Bucks and Commanders, I was pretty confident about them. We'll leave the Lions out as well because that'd be quite controversial as well, and being replaced by the 49ers, like as a lot. The Falcons are going to win the South, and then we'll put the Cowboys in as well, sneaking into that 7th seed. Sorry,
2nd seed. That'd be good.
That'd be weird, but yeah.
Right. We've got some differences and some the same there. And then when the Patriots finish with 2 wins, I can readdress this in 12 months' time. That'll be good. Cool. That's it for today's episode. We'll be leaving Lee so he can travel stateside and see if he can find me a Spencer Rattler jersey in a store near you. Yeah, Lee. Do you want to shout out kind of where people can follow you? And I know you mentioned it before, but any work that you might be doing this season for the Touchdown?
Yeah, obviously, Touchdown is ramping up now with a lot of good stuff coming out. I know that the content will be ramping up to a lot more articles weekly as we've had a bit of a quiet period over the summer. But yeah, find me at Wakefield 90. It's on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, on Twitter. And then obviously at Touchdown NFL, where you can see all of our content. I'll be concentrating on the defense side of the ball, said last time, talking about pass rushers throughout the season. And then we'll be talking about some draft content as the calendar turns to 2026.
Great. Appreciate it. And also anyone listening, a lot of college football stuff coming out from those guys as well, even just as fans. It's always good to read up on that side of things before the draft gets here. And then for us, we've got another week of division previews to record. So they'll be out in the next 10 days or so. And then we'll have our bumper predictions episode. And then we'll be on to week 1 where, Patrick will be live watching the banner come down in Philly. And I'll be at home crying about that. Mine and Lee's team probably fall all over the place on an ice rink.
Probably.
But you can follow us at Go42Pod on Twitter /X. And then on YouTube as well, we're just Go42Pod on there. So yeah, thanks everyone for listening. And we will speak to you guys soon.